Most men start from the same assumption. If they are good-looking enough, good at conversation, interesting enough, or successful enough, women will naturally be drawn to them. I used to think that way, and I don't blame you if you think the same, because society, social media, movies, everything is telling you the same thing. But the truth is, women are not deeply attracted by those things, at least not in the way men usually imagine. They may notice, they may be curious, they may be initially impressed, but what makes them stay, what makes them want to see you again, talk more, spend more time near you, is not your looks, money, or conversational skills. It is how they feel when they are around you. Women respond very strongly to energy, to the inner state of the man in front of them. They can sense whether you are rushing or not, whether you're insecure or not, whether you're trying to prove something. You may say very little, but if you are internally stable, they still feel at ease. On the other hand, you may talk a lot and speak very well, but if inside you're tense, afraid of losing, trying to impress, they still feel tired. This is something I only understood after going through enough relationships and observing enough men around me. Women are not drawn to the image you're trying to portray. They are drawn to who you are when you are not trying at all. What I'm about to say next is not a trick, not a shortcut to flirt faster. These are very small habits, but repeated over time, they create presence. And it is that presence that creates unconscious attraction. These 7 habits do not turn you into someone else. They simply help you become a more grounded version of yourself. And when you change from the inside, women are merely responding to that. Among all the things that create attraction in a man, this is the strongest. Not because it is flashy, but because everything else originates from here. A man with a clear sense of purpose creates a natural gravity. No effort. No need to talk much. Just standing there. Others can feel it. Purpose is not a grand slogan, nor does it need to be a dream of doing something great. It is simply knowing where you're going, what you are building, and taking one small step toward it each day. When a man has no direction, he easily revolves around women, messages, emotions, and her reactions become the center. He feels good when she gives attention, and anxious when she goes quiet. Not because he is weak, but because he has nothing else big enough to keep him grounded. Women sense this very quickly, and they get tired of being the emotional anchor for a grown man. They do not want to carry, they want to walk alongside. On the other hand, when you have a purpose, women are no longer the center of your life, yet they become a meaningful part of it. You do not need to cling, because your life already has an axis. You do not need to hold on tightly, because you are busy living, and that is what creates attraction, not because you are indifferent, but because you have direction. When you know where you're going, women begin to wonder whether they get to go with you. They feel safe being near someone who is moving, growing, progressing forward. Not because the future is promised, but because your present is already solid. A man with purpose does not need to prove his value. His value shows in how he uses his time, his energy, and his attention each day. And from that purpose, everything else has space to form. Calmness, confidence, emotional control. All of it is a result. If you remember only one thing from this part, remember this: women are not attracted to you chasing them. They are attracted to you chasing a life. Calmness is one of the deepest signals of safety a man can bring. Not cold silence, and not the act of pretending to not care. True calmness comes from not being pulled around by external things. You do not react hastily. You do not jump at every message. You do not let your mood shift just because someone else is happy or upset today. And women sense this very clearly. They can feel whether the man in front of them is standing firmly or not. Most men lose their calmness because they are trying to prove something. Trying to prove they are interesting, important, and worthy of attention. When you still need to prove yourself, you will always be rushed. Rushed to reply, rushed to explain, rushed to fix everything. But when you no longer need to prove who you are, calmness naturally appears. You do not need to react immediately, because you are not afraid of losing. You do not need to say much because you trust that your presence is enough. And it is precisely this groundedness that makes women feel safe. Around you, they do not need to guess what you are thinking, whether you are angry or whether you're insecure. They do not need to be defensive. They do not need to brace themselves. Their body and emotions can relax. and that is when real connection begins. A calm man is not calm because he controls everything, but because he controls himself. When tension arises, he does not avoid it, but he is not dragged into it either. When emotions appear, he does not deny them, but he does not let them drive him. That calmness does not come from technique, but from having an inner axis, a purpose, something larger to anchor to. Because when you are stable inside, the outside naturally slows down, and if you feel like you're trying too hard, remember this simple line: you do not need to do more, you just need to be more grounded. There are many things that can create initial attraction, but very few create long-term bonding. And one of them is how you maintain stability when her emotions are in chaos. Any man can be pleasant when things are easy, but when she's tense, anxious, angry, or caught in a web of messy thoughts, the reflex of most men is either to argue, to explain, or to try to make everything right again. The problem is, at that moment, she does not need things to be right. She needs to feel safe. When you remain steady in the storm of her emotions, you become an anchor, not an anchor that drags her down, but one she can hold on to and regulate herself. You do not need to lecture. You do not need to analyze who is right or wrong. You do not need to turn the conversation into a battle. You just need to hold the rhythm, hold your tone, hold your presence. Women sense very quickly when a man starts getting pulled into drama, when his voice rises, when his reactions outrun his thinking, when he tries to win instead of trying to understand, and they also sense when a man stays there, does not walk away, but does not get dragged in either. This difference creates a very deep sense of attachment, because it tells them that with this person, they do not have to strain to manage both sets of emotions. A man who controls his emotions is not someone who has no emotions, but someone who knows when to speak and when to be silent. He does not need to prove that he is right. He just needs not to collapse. And sometimes, the very fact that you do not fall apart with her emotions is what helps her stand steady again. As I said, it is not always about saying the right thing. Sometimes, it is simply about not collapsing. There is a balance that very few men ever reach. That is being strong with life, but gentle with the woman they are with. Most men tend to fall into one of two extremes. Either they are rigid, controlling, and always needing to be right, or they are too soft, too accommodating, so afraid of upsetting others that they lose themselves. Both exhaust women. The man women are truly drawn to is the one who can stand firm under the pressure of life. But when he turns toward her, he knows how to lower his armor. He does not need to tense up. He does not need to display power. He simply needs to be present. Being strong with life means you take responsibility for your own life. You dare to decide, dare to lead, dare to step up when needed. But being gentle with her means you know how to listen, how to feel, how to know when to slow down. You do not see listening as a weakness. You do not see care as a loss of value. And it is precisely this flexibility that creates a very deep sense of safety. Women can feel that. Besides this man, they are both protected and respected. You do not impose, but you do not surrender either. You lead, but you do not drag. You're strong, but not rough. You're gentle, but not weak. This balance is rare because it requires a man to truly understand himself. No need to prove masculinity, and no fear of showing emotion. And when you can live in the space between these two extremes, women are not only attracted, but they also feel secure staying. As I often say, most men choose one side. You are the one who stands in the middle. Many men think that to be liked by women, they have to impress. They have to speak better, care more, and show more. But the more you try to impress, the more you place yourself in a lower position. When you flatter, overpraise, or idolize her, the dynamic of the interaction immediately shifts. You start seeking validation, and she becomes the one who grants it. And women sense this very quickly. The man they respect is not the one who overwhelms them, but the one who is not easily shaken. You are not cold. You simply do not rush to give away your value. You see her as a human being, with strengths and imperfections, just like you. Not as a prize to be conquered, when you stop trying to impress, women begin to invest, not because you are indifferent, but because you are not placing yourself beneath them. They feel the desire to be seen, to be recognized, to step into your world, and at that point, The interaction becomes more balanced. You do not need to try to please. You only need to hold your position. Respect does not come from doing more, but from not losing your boundaries. When you stand firmly in your own value, women feel it and naturally adjust. And if there is one sentence you should remember from this part, it is this: you are not cold. You are simply not easily shaken. Mystery is not disappearing, nor is it deliberately being confusing or playing push and pull games. True mystery simply means you do not reveal everything about yourself right from the start. You do not overshare. You do not unload your entire life, emotions, and thoughts onto someone just because you are afraid they will not understand you. You allow things to unfold gradually, over time, with closeness. When you share in parts, at the right moments, women feel there is space to be curious, to explore, but they do not feel unsafe because you are still present. You are still consistent. You do not vanish, nor do you act unpredictably. Your life continues to move forward, and she is simply being invited, little by little, into its layers. At this point, mystery does not come from hiding, but from not rushing. You do not need to say everything to be understood. You trust that, given enough time, who you truly are will reveal itself. And it is precisely this slowness that gives emotions room to grow. Women begin to think, begin to replay conversations, begin to wonder about you. Not because you are playing psychological games, but because you are not trying to hold on to them. And when you do not try to hold, cling, or tense up to control, something very interesting happens. She begins to want to stay. When you do not try to hold her, she begins to want to stay.